A contest which began in bright sunshine and offered much excitement suffered a dull finish in the Wellington gloom. India may have recorded their first series win in New Zealand since 1967, but the team walked back disappointed at not having their dominance reflected in the final 1-0 scoreline. On the final day of the third test, New Zealand was struggling at 284 for 8, chasing a mammoth 617, before rain, which had stayed clear until the last day of the tour, inevitably intervened. The two teams went into the series after a period of contrasting fortunes. India started favourites, and for Dhoni's men and a billion fans back home, nothing but a comprehensive win would have been an acceptable result. When the Indians arrived in New Zealand, the New Zealand Cricket Board ran a campaign, "The rock stars of cricket are coming." The stage was set, but the visitors stumbled in the first leg of the tour, losing both T20 internationals. Boosted by the success of Gautam Gambhir, Virendra Sehwag and Sachin Tendulkar, India, purely by the way they dominated with the bat, won the ODI series 3-1. Their first ever series win in the shorter version of the game in New Zealand. As the focus shifted to the tests, one thing was clear. Unlike last time, the tracks for the series were by and large quite competitive. There was something in it for both the batsmen and the bowlers. Hamilton, the venue for the first test, was marked with an eventful first day. India's seamers justified MS Dhoni's decision to field. Zaheer Khan, Ishant Sharma and Munaf Patel all chipped in to leave New Zealand struggling at 60 for 6. The hosts had to rely on their captain to lead the rescue. He found an able partner in Jesse Ryder, who scored his maiden test century. But not before he went through a nervous passage in 98 with the number 11 Chris Martin at the other end. Vettori himself contributed 118, his third test done, and the pair helped their team salvage a more competitive 279. India were unfazed by New Zealand's resistance. Taking full advantage of the favourable conditions, they piled up 520 runs in their first innings. India's batting was led by Sachin Tendulkar, who reached his 42nd test century. India put in a collective batting display with half-centuries from Gautam Gambhir and Rahul Dravid. Gambhir, by the end of the series, had established himself as the mainstay of India's batting. Useful contributions from MS Dhoni and Zaheer Khan helped India extend their lead to a sizable 241 runs. If pace proved the undoing of New Zealand's batting in the first innings, it was Harbhajan Singh's spin in the second that took India to their first win in the country in 33 years. In his best performance overseas, he broke a steady stand of 68 for the second wicket by dismissing Martin Guptill, rattled the middle order with the wickets of Ryder, James Franklin and half-centurion Daniel Flynn in a space of 29 runs. Then he hastened the end, getting rid of Vettori and Ian O'Brien. He finished with figures of 6 for 68. Brendan McCullum made a defiant 84, but New Zealand's other batsmen failed to measure up to Harbhajan's spin. They were bowled out yet again for 279, managing a lead of just 38. The Indian openers took just a little over 5 overs to complete the formalities on the fourth day. It was one of their most convincing wins overseas, which took them a step closer towards winning the first Test series in New Zealand in 41 years. Barring the T20 loss, the tour had progressed for India as per expectations. But Napier almost marked a twist in the tail. New Zealand batted well on a placid track and came pretty close to upsetting India's victorious run. MS Dhoni had to opt out of the game as a result of an injured back, and it was Virendra Sehwag who walked out for the toss. The hosts began much the same way as they had done in Hamilton. They lost their first 3 wickets for 23. But Ryder continued his dream spell to allow his team to dominate much of the tests. Still in his formative years as an international test batsman, he scored a mature double century. He was well supported by an out-of-touch Ross Taylor, who put behind a lean phase with a chancy but aggressive 151. Together they were involved in a record stand of 271. Brendan McCullum had struggled to replicate his ODI form in tests, but he took charge and scored his third test century. New Zealand batted India out of the game, posting an intimidating 619. India's response required patience and determination, but none of that was apparent in the manner of Sehwag's dismissal on the third day. He attempted a slog only to be caught behind off Vettori. India were in trouble at 79 for 3. Dravid, Tendulkar and Lakshman, 3 of India's veteran campaigners, resisted well. But New Zealand bowlers put in a combined effort on a flat track to take them within the reach of a series levelling win. Led by Martin's 3 for 89, New Zealand bowled India out for 305 and were made to follow on. With over 2 days to survive, India had to bat out time. Their formidable batting lineup faced one of its stiffest assignments. Sehwag faltered once again, but the rest rallied superbly around an epic 137 by Gautam Gambhir. He put on display his ability to endure for long hours against his reputation for being a natural stroke maker up the order. His innings was the slowest by an Indian in Tests. It lasted 436 balls and was accompanied by a series of fighting performances from Dravid, Sachin and VVS Lakshman. India saved the Test against the odds. They preserved their lead and snatched the momentum from New Zealand in lead up to the third Test in Wellington. The hosts were denied a second chance in the final game, but they had themselves to blame in part. New Zealand's decision to field first appeared to have been vindicated when they had limited India to 204 for 6. But Dhoni, in a decisive phase in the series, together with the tail led by Harbhajan Singh's entertaining 60, helped India set a challenging score of 379. On a pitch that offered its share of assistance to fast bowlers, Zaheer proved lethal with his pace and movement to dent New Zealand top order. He went on to take 5 for 65, an effort reminiscent of his match-winning haul at Trent Bridge against England. He was well assisted by Harbhajan and together they bowled New Zealand out for 197. India earned a substantial lead of 182. In the second innings, Gambhir rounded off a career-defining tour with 167. Dravid and Lakshman added another half-century to their exhaustive list. India declared on 434 for 7 on the fourth day. This decision came with its share of criticism that it came a little too late. New Zealand were left to chase an improbable 617 and the Indian bowlers kept chipping away at the hosts. Taylor scored his second century of the series and his 160-run stand with Franklin kept India at bay. Finally, Harbhajan's spin on the final day and 2-wicket burst from Sachin had all but almost sealed India's second win. But it was not to be. For the first time in the series, the weather had the final say. Persistent drizzle and fading light helped New Zealand escape with a draw. When you look back at the series, despite the late letdown, India has definitely taken another step in the right direction and perhaps marched a little further in the world order that doesn't really have a clear number one. With Siddhartha Talia, this is Ranjit Shinde for Cricinfo Talk.
This is Cricinfo Talk.